Before we begin, may we join in a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the teaching ministry at Faith Middle School and High School in Las Vegas. Our prayer is that you will continue to bless them in their ministry to their students and their families. May we learn from them what they share with us today with the use of technology to share your gospel message. And Lord, give all Lutheran schools the energy to be servants of Christ in our communities and in our schools. Amen. At this time, we'll turn it over to Jonathan.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jonathan Orr. I serve as the technology coordinator at Faith Lutheran Junior Senior High School. My phone's in kind of a different position than my computer, so I just want to do a little sound check here. Is everybody hearing okay? You can say it in the chat.
Sounds good.
All right, sounds great. So what I want to do today is kind of walk you through just kind of a history of what Faith Lutheran has done technology-wise, and just some of the lessons we've learned. Because as we've gone along, we've been doing this for a little while now. We've definitely, we've had a lot of successes, which is why we've been invited to do this. But we also had, a lot of interesting stumbling blocks along the way. And one of my goals today is to hopefully help you guys avoid those stumbling blocks that we had encountered as we went along. Because we've so kind of hopefully at the same time I can share with you, where we're at now, where we want to go, and then kind of those stumbling blocks that we can avoid in the future. I want to do something kind of a little different maybe for a webinar. I hope we have enough participants to try this, just because I like to model and try new things as we go along. But the first question I want to ask is, whenever we're thinking about these things and whenever we're thinking about doing things with technology, we want to take a snapshot of what we want our school, or if you're a classroom teacher out there, what we want our classroom to look like. And so I kind of want to get some audience participation, because these things are so hard to get audience participation from. And I'm going to put a link up here for you in the chat room. And I'd love for you guys to participate with me. There's our link. And go ahead and click on that link, and you should see something that looks like this. It's an empty document. There we go. And so I kind of want to get some of your thoughts and pick some of your brains, and hopefully maybe during the webinar I can address some of these thoughts and brains. And you have full control over this document. And so I'd love for you to just, in that first question there, what characteristics do you want your school classroom to have when it comes to teaching and learning? Notice I didn't talk about technology there. I want you to envision your school from a teaching and learning standpoint. What do you see as a school leader or as a classroom teacher going on? Kind of vision cast for me for a second, if you will, and we can make a. We've got about 6 people in the document, so that's good. And for recording purposes, I'm going to see if I can make this a little bigger. There we go. And so we've got a few people entering some things in here. You guys can write simultaneously. You don't have to you don't have to wait for your turn. Go ahead and start just filling in some things. So we're seeing students intentionally engaged. We're seeing collaboration. We're seeing problem solving. Differentiated instruction, good. The application piece, very cool. All right, so as instructional leaders or as classroom teachers, these are all things that we that I think we might struggle with. I think some of the things that we look at and some of the things that we achieve to have are not the easy things. They're not the easy things to do, and so obtaining some of these things might be kind of difficult. So hopefully we're going to kind of walk a course today that's going to help you guys plan for your schools or for your classrooms a different a way to engage your students. And again, I'm just going to go back. You guys can keep typing in there. I'll be able to monitor it. No, I won't. I'll come back and check on it in a second. But the question is, we want to have these vibrant, engaging classrooms and schools where the learning is really, the kids are excited and they're really they just want to be there. And so I want to start off with is when we're looking at technology programs and when we're looking at implementing different things into our classrooms and to our schools. I like this quote from Stephen Hoppel that says, it is important that we don't bolt technology on what we used to do, but when you say, what could we do? That's when you get extraordinary results. And so oftentimes when we're thinking about, what we want to do in our school, the first thing that we do is we're like, okay, we grab our technology and we think of it as another add-on, especially from a teacher standpoint, it says this is just another thing that I have to do now. You've just added to my load, and that's not what technology is about at all. Technology is about reinventing and reimagining the possibilities of what really can happen in an engaging learning environment. And so from a teacher standpoint, you want to really think differently about what's going on in your classroom. And from an administrator standpoint, you want to think about, what is possible in my school. It shouldn't be all right, I just have another thing to do inside of my school. Is where can I take my school that it's never been gone, where we've never been going before. And one of the key things to doing that is this journey concept. We put up so many barriers in our own ways. When we start talking about change, when we start talking about technology, and we start talking about anything that we want to do in our schools, the first thing that always happens is, you get 10 hands raised in the room, and you say, well, what about this? And so whenever we start a journey, the first thing we want to do is we want to make that journey, as easy as possible. We want to get rid of some of the baggage or those barriers that might possibly be in our way. And I think one of the hardest things to change and one of the hardest things to deal with, and culturally at Faith Lutheran, this has been I think probably the most difficult challenge, has been the change by people. Okay, it's easy to change buildings. It's easy to change infrastructure. It's easy to get technology into students' hands. That's the easy part, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But I want to tackle the more difficult issue first, and that's removing these barriers. And because usually, if you're an instructional leader, usually when we advocate change, we usually mean by other people. And so for the instructional leaders in the room, when you're trying to lead a cultural change or a technological change, or you're trying to get something new off the ground, it all starts with the person at the top and the modeling, and it's really hard to get teachers in their classrooms to change if things in the school and things culturally don't change as well, and this creates anxiety. Okay, that's human nature. We all, when we think about doing things differently, and when we think about these radical plans that we have, the first thing that happens is we just get tense, and we just get we like, oh no, where are we going now? It's that fear of the unknown. And so what I want to talk through a little bit and talk about our experiences. This was given to me. This past summer when I was actually presenting at a different conference in Michigan. And this comes from the Van Meter School District in Van Meter, Iowa. And it looks like the yellow isn't showing up on your screens real well there, but that says the yellow bubble is action plans. And it's kind of a cool model for looking at change within your building and what makes change successful. And so when you look at the components of what's really necessary for change, you see that across the top. First, there has to be some sort of vision. If you don't know where you're going, then you're going to have issues. Then you got the skills that are needed, the incentives, resources, and then action plans. And what I like about this chart is when you're implementing anything, and in our case we're going to talk about this in the context of technology, there are some key indicators from your organization that will help you determine where you might be weak in your school or in your organization. And so if we just look here, if you have all those key components in place, then change is relatively easy, and it eases that anxiety that might be felt. But if you want to get a technology program going and there's no vision for that, then you're going to see confusion amongst your people. You're going to have people like, what are we doing? What's going on? What's coming into our building next year? What do you expect of us? And so you're going to see that confusion amongst both your teachers, your parents, and your students. Okay, so that vision must be very clearly cast, not just to your faculties or not just to your, but it also needs to be cast to your student population. It needs to be cast to your parent population. It needs to be cast to the greater community as well. Or even, and if you're attached, we're not directly attached to a congregation, but that vision should be cast to the congregation as well. And so the next one over the skills, and this is especially true with your teachers. Okay. You can't just plop a new tool in their lap, whatever that tool is, okay, and expect them to immediately, one, know how to use it just for themselves, but two, implement it successfully into their classroom. If you give a teacher a tool without any proper training, you're going to create a very anxious faculty, and that has negative implications on the school culture. So giving the teachers the skills and professional development, which is what we're going to talk about, is extremely important. Then incentives. There's got to be some sort of reason that the teachers or the students or the parents, there's got to be something at the end for them. There's got to be something out there that makes this good for them. Now, if you're a high school, okay, or even an elementary school or a school at any level, you can't promise better test scores. That if there's one caution I could give you, you don't want to do that, because right now in the literature there's nothing that you can definitively point to that says technology is going to increase test scores. But number two, you can't hold that promise up. Okay, and so but there's other incentives out there, and I think you should we want to go back and look at those goals and those visions that you posted a little bit earlier and say, hey, we have students that are more engaged. We have students that are thinking deeper. We have students that are applying. Those are really good incentives. And teachers want to latch onto those. I don't think there's not a teacher out there that says I want a bunch of board students in my classroom. And so those sorts of things we want to look at. The next one over is resources. If you tell teachers you expect this but don't support them with the appropriate resources, that creates resistance. Teachers are going to say, well, if you're not going to support me, whether it's with software, hardware, or professional development, okay, if you're not going to give me the support I need, then I'm going to resist this. Then the action plan. Okay, if there's no, let's see, where am I at? Yeah, or resources, frustration. All right, the action plan. If there's no action plan in place, then you end up with multiple false starts because you didn't think through maybe some things. And you might have to, reboot, so to speak. Sorry for the bad pun, but and that's something we experienced here at Faith Lutheran as well. We had a few false starts before, before we really started feeling like we were rolling. One example that I could give there is we started, down a path where we were working with gateway computers. We kind of knew we wanted to implement more technology, and so we bought a bunch of gateway computers, but we really didn't have a plan for them. We thought, okay, let's put them on carts and see how that goes for a little while, with this kind of nebulous goal of eventually we want to get to one-to-one without really any plan in place on how to get there. And we just didn't think through all the implications of putting all these laptops on carts, and that caused us actually some headache. We didn't think through the implications of, okay, if the kids are on carts, then we have to, we're going to spend 10 minutes at the beginning of class and 10 minutes at the end of class just managing the devices. Now we've lost 20 minutes of instructional time, and so that didn't work out real well for us. So we invested a lot of money into this cart solution that didn't work out real well, and so that was kind of just a poor planning aspect, something we really didn't think through on our part, and so looking at this chart is really helpful when you need all these pieces in place moving forward with something. The other thing for leaders is you want to make sure that when you're crafting your vision, when you're putting your vision out there for your constituents, that you want it to be something that everybody wants to strive for, but it's not so crazy and ridiculous that everybody's going to think it's impossible. There's that happy buy-in zone, and so when you're thinking through as a leader, you want to kind of find that hidden sweet spot so you can alleviate tension. Because if you throw your goals out there that are too lofty, okay, again, you're going to go back and create some of that anxiety for maybe that veteran teacher that hasn't had a computer in their classroom for the last 25 years, and now you're going to say, so you want to make sure that you're finding this kind of sweet buy-in zone for your faculties and families as well. And so the first thing that I want to kind of talk about as a spin-off of kind of this visionary leadership piece is the professional development. And one of the things when you're starting a technology program at your school is professional development is absolutely the number one component that you want to invest in for your faculty. And you have to provide them with time and resources to be able to utilize whatever program or technology you're putting in front of them. And so you can't put professional development out there for your faculty as an opportunity, but as an essential piece of the entire program. And so when you're doing that, when you're crafting professional development programs, okay, you need to make sure that you're looking at the professional development for your teachers' needs, for your school. Okay? There are a ton of pre-packaged programs out there that are going to claim to come in and make the biggest claims in the world, but they come in and they don't connect with your teachers. They don't have an immediate connection with their curriculum. They don't have an immediate connection. So the professional development needs to be tailored to the school's goals, okay, not just the whatever organization is trying to sell you this professional development. And so some of the best professional development programs that are out there are actually done in-house. Okay, they're not contracting with outside companies. We think about how much money we spend on contracting with some of these outside companies, and if you take that money and invest it in people internally, you can find that you may even gain much greater results. And so that professional development and tailoring it to your situation and tailoring it to your culture and tailoring it to your goals that you listened to or that you had earlier, you want to make sure that you're able to do that. Okay? It's also really important in professional development that you involve students. One of the things that's kind of cool is our teachers learn from our students all the time. They are, I've had numerous teachers come up to me and say, hey, you know what, I had this student show me this really neat trick that I could do with my keynote presentation. I never knew I could do that before. Or, I was working on this project with my students and they were showing me how to edit this clip in iMovie, or things along those lines. So involving students in professional development is really a key piece to the whole part of it, because our students are smart. We have at Faith, we've taken it a step farther. We actually, our IT department, just for technical parts, not necessarily the education component, but for technical parts, we have several students that work for our IT department as a course. And so our students are going out into classrooms and helping teachers with, sometimes their projector's not working right, or maybe they're not connected to their printer, or some of those types of tasks that we've rallied the student body for and help. Okay? And then also with professional development, it's extremely important that you not just tailor it to your school's culture, but you get it all the way down to the teacher level, which means a lot of one-on-one time. It means a lot of individualized instruction. I mean, our teachers are learners just like our students are. And so some of my most successful times that I've had with teachers have been when we've been working one-on-one. I'm sitting down with them and working with them on a specific lesson, or I'm sitting down with them and walking them through how to do a particular process. Because we all know what happens when we get into professional development sessions where we're in large groups, and you've got the people in the back that aren't paying any attention. You've got the people in the front that are completely engaged, and then you've got every range in between. And are you really getting the most, if you're paying for that professional development, okay, are you getting the most bang for your buck? Is that a good investment? And so so professional development needs to be tailored to the individual teacher, and then you can more easily tie that into a direct impact into their curriculum, because that's ultimately what the teacher wants to know. How can I do this in my classroom? And they're not going to necessarily have the time or they're not going to have the ability to take that out of a large group session and apply it directly into their classroom. They need that one-on-one time. They need that time there with professional development leaders. Okay. Providing multiple settings and venues. Okay. Virtual settings are an important piece to this. We're all doing this virtually right now. We have a live webinar. It's going to be archived later. I write tutorials for my teachers. I do screencasts. I write step-by-step instructions. We have discussion forums. We have help desks. And so we have virtual settings, because especially when you're in a scenario where all your teachers are on different prep periods and getting time together is a difficult thing. And so this helps solve that time issue a little bit for some of that on-demand kind of help that they need, because they don't have to necessarily be in the same place at the same time. And so providing multiple virtual settings or multiple offerings if you're doing them live. Okay, but offering different ways for professional development is also important. And then the do-it-yourself in-house learning, okay, is extremely important. We just happen to be taking time tomorrow. Actually, we have a half day tomorrow, and so part of our faculty meeting tomorrow is working with, we have several teachers that have done some really cool stuff this year, and so we're taking some time to allow them to show off what they've done in their classroom and to teach others how to do that. Here's what I did. Okay, you could do this in your classroom too, and here's how. And so when teachers are doing that inside of their classrooms, and when teachers are doing that with other teachers, it builds a sense of ownership amongst the faculty as well. It's not just this arbitrary vision that's being cast down upon them, but it builds that sense of ownership, and they latch onto it, and they're like, and it also, it rewards those that are doing really cool things. There's when they're up in front and showing them, that we did this really cool lesson, it's like it gives, when everybody claps for them at the end, it's like, yeah, I did something really great, and next time I'm going to do something even better. And then it also brings up the people that are like, wow, I really want to be picked to do that sort of thing. So that in-house learning and that sharing and that collaborative environment that you create amongst your teachers is an extremely important piece. I'm going to talk a little bit next on how Faith puts that into practice in a little bit more detail. I haven't seen a whole lot of questions come through the chat room, but I wanted to maybe take a pause here for a second and see if there are any questions or anything that you want me to elaborate on real quick.
They're all muted, John, so they can raise their hand in the bottom left-hand corner,
sure.
And then I can go ahead and unmute them.
Now, feel free as we go along to post things in the chat. I haven't seen a whole lot of people in the chat down there, but yeah, feel free to use that chat, ask questions, and we'll continue on. Feel free to interrupt me as we go. I want to make sure that this is applicable to everyone here. All right. So putting this professional development into action, I want to use a little analogy here of the rotting ship. And with the rotting ship, let's pretend for a moment that that our school is a ship, and we're out at sea. And this ship it's not in very good shape, okay? And there's no way we're going to get back to port, but we have to be able to get this ship, we got to be able to survive, okay? And so if we're going to do that, we need to start making repairs on our ship. But to make repairs on our ship, the first thing we're not going to be able, we don't want to rip up every board at the same time, or else the ship would obviously then sink, because if we rip up every board, ship's going to sink to the bottom because it's going to fill with water. Okay? And so when we're thinking about making changes, and when we're thinking about doing something different in our classroom, okay, we don't want to rip up every board at the same time. That's going to cause chaos. It's going to cause sinking. Okay? What we want to do is we want to find maybe a key board that needs to be replaced, and we're going to replace that board first. And we're going to get that board replaced, and we're going to get that board solid. And now we have something to stand on. Okay? We have something to stand on, and then we can start replacing the boards around it. Okay? And we can start replacing the boards around it. Now we got a little more footing in which to work with, and then we can replace, and we can pick up another board. And the key here is we don't want to pick up too many boards at the same time. Okay? In fact, it would probably be best if you're an individual classroom teacher to work on one board at a time. Okay? And as a school, you probably don't want to work on too many boards at the same time, or else we know that causes when you get too many balls in the air, that causes some chaos. But I hope you can get the analogy that once we get that first plank replaced, that's a success, and now we have something to stand on, and we have something to build off of. And so we want to start with some successes. And so when you're working with your teachers, you want to make sure that you're giving them time to experiment and time to play inside their classroom. You want to give them chances to experience that success. Okay? And that means that there's going to be some risk-taking involved, and you want to make sure that that's a culture that you build inside of your classroom, that it's okay for the teachers to make mistakes. Okay? It's okay for them because unless you try something new or try something different, you're not going to find those successes that you have to stand on. Okay? You're going to kind of continue to stay in the same spot that you've always been all along. Okay? And so you want to make sure that that with this professional development time that you're providing, okay, and that you're giving the teachers the tools, that you're also giving them time to experiment and play with different things in their classroom. And you want to make sure that you're creating a safe environment in your school for the teachers to be able to do that. You want to make sure that they're able to try something new, and that you're supportive of that, and that if it doesn't go quite perfect the first time, that you reflect on that, and then you do it better the next time. But again, giving teachers time is extremely, extremely, extremely important, because that's the number one thing that teachers always say. Oh, I don't have enough time to get this done. And they're always going to say that, but in some cases, I think in our Lutheran schools, we don't give them any time. And that's a detriment to the school culture. And you got to give your teachers time to be able to not just get their daily work done, their papers graded and things like that, but you got to give them time to really think about new things that are going on inside their classroom. And you got to create a safe environment to do that. One of the things that we've done at Faith, from a time perspective, is I talked about once a month we have half days, or we can get together and talk about teaching and learning in our classroom. Our half days are not just for getting caught up on grading papers. It's intentional time that we can sit and talk about learning. It's an intentional time to talk about how we can improve inside of our classrooms. And it's not just bringing in a speaker and coming up with a couple of good ideas. We're doing it internally. We're really thinking deeply about how we can change what's going on inside of our classrooms. One model that we are just starting to roll with here at Faith Lutheran this year that has already shown great success is called the peer model, and it comes from research by Brad Ermling. The article that he just published is Improving Teaching Through Continuous Learning, the inquiry process used by John Wooden, used to become the coach of the century. But what Brad has done is he's created this inquiry process that is very, very intentional at looking at problems with learning and what's going on inside the classroom. And I'll relate this to technology in just a second. But one of the first things that we need to do, and that we do with our teachers, is we identify and define what's going on inside of our classrooms and what do our students really struggle with. Every year we always talk about, oh, my kids just never get this, or oh, my kids just I don't know what I can do to get them to understand that. Okay? And so we need to identify those sorts of things, because if we just keep throwing the same solutions at them, then that's going to be an issue, because obviously those solutions haven't worked in the past. Okay? All right, and then we need to, once we identify those, okay, the second part of this is we need to collaboratively, not just put it on the onus of one teacher in whatever random time we give them, during dedicated time, dedicated sessions. And we've set aside Tuesday mornings to do that. We start an hour later, or we actually start a half hour later, and then we bring the teachers in a half hour earlier, so we gain an hour of time on every Tuesday morning to do this, where we are going to talk about in small groups, okay, what can we do to address this learning problem, and actually write a lesson together to address that. Now, that means, we work in teams, and that means as a teacher, you may not be working on a lesson that you may ever teach, but you might be helping another teacher work on a lesson that's going to be absolutely phenomenal in their classroom, and then when you're done with that, then you can maybe reciprocate. Okay? But we're working in small teams to create dynamite, detailed instructional lessons that will be implemented inside the classroom. Okay? Once we implement those lessons, okay, we're gonna intentionally collect some data to look at did this instructional technique really impact student learning, and we actually collect samples of student writing, of projects, and we actually look at and correlate those to the educational objectives that we set at the beginning. Did the students actually learn what we wanted them to learn? Okay? And we reflect upon that. Okay? And when we reflect upon that, hopefully we can glean some knowledge about our practice, about our teaching and learning. And so we can then start applying that in other areas. Hey, this strategy worked really well here. There's no reason why it shouldn't work really well over here. And what we found, and so I can relate this back to the technology piece, is that when working with learners in the digital age, okay, we have found when we're preparing these lesson plans that we're truly engaging students and that we're truly seeing improvements in our educational objectives that we set for them when we utilize technology as a new and innovative tool and not just using it to kind of tie this back to the beginning, not adding it on as something additional that we've done before. We're engaged. So what that's done for us here at Faith is it's really brought a positive light on technology because now the teachers are really seeing the benefit of it. They're really engaged in, oh, wow, this can really help student learning instead of seeing it as, oh, my administrator wants me to add another thing, so now I'm going to have to do this technology project, and I didn't have time to get through my curriculum before. And so technology is really, really important in student learning when used in that way. Instead of, before the students might have made a poster board and now they're making a PowerPoint presentation. Well, that's not really, that's just doing what you did before, but you're doing it digitally. From an instructional standpoint, you're not really doing anything different. You're not changing what you're doing at your school. You're just adding a flashy component to it. And so, so to make this a true educational tool, and it's really helped lift the technology. Actually, because one of the things that we've experienced at Faith was that resistance. You're just adding another thing to our plate, and we experienced that big time here with our faculty until we really started focusing on not the technology but the instruction. But when you focus on the instruction, the technology naturally gets folded into it, because when you really think deeply about how learning occurs in an engaging and meaningful and relevant way inside of your classroom, you can't help but fold technology into that. And so that's been a really key, important piece for us. The other thing I think that's important for Lutheran schools, because I just don't know if this has been part of Lutheran culture in general, actually, is this. Not taking risks can be very risky. Okay? This is kind of a spin-off of, I don't know if you've read Seth Godin's The Purple Cow, but he says in his book that safe is risky. Okay? Because the premise of that book is, once you've seen a cow, the second and third cows aren't really exciting. Okay? So what are we offering in our schools that allows us to be that purple cow? If you see a purple cow, you're going to be really surprised. You're going to be double take. Wow, what's going on? And so one of the things that we did do here was our administration took some risks, some big risks, and said, you know what? We're going to go forward with this. We don't necessarily have all the answers, okay? But you're never going to have all the answers. There's a difference between going in blind and going in with, a few questions still, and that's a big difference. Okay? But if you're always trying to get all of your questions answered, you're never going to move forward. And so I think one of the things that we did, and that we did fairly successfully, was we took a risk. We said, you know what? 7 years ago, we're going to start getting more technology on our campus, and we're going to make a significant investment towards that, and we're going to move in that direction. And so we took a risk, and it's paid off. And so fortunately we had some very some good visionary leadership in that regard, and we were able to get to our one-to-one laptop program, and those risks were we're paid off. The other thing that you need to have in your schools is support. Okay? You got to have support for your teachers. You got to have support for your administration. You got to have that support network built in. Teachers really like it. They like having a technology coach on campus. That's kind of my role. I work with the teachers and developing lessons inside their classroom, and I work with the teachers and I coach them along. I'm more of a coaching role than anything else. And so I help them in that regard. Teachers also really appreciate having mentors, other rock star teachers inside of their school that are willing to share their knowledge, and having those teacher mentors around. And then the other thing you have to have in place is an IT staff, okay, that can support all of these things. There's nothing that frustrates a teacher more, and we experience this a lot because I think we're still understaffed. But nothing frustrates teachers more than not having anybody to go to. They need to have somebody there that can answer their questions, because if they can't have their questions answered, whether it's from an educational standpoint or from a technical standpoint, and those are two very different types of questions, which is why you have two different types of people to answer them, then they're not going to move forward. They need to feel that support so that they can take those risks. And so we're fortunate enough to have, and you see 7 people in that picture there, okay? But 3 of them are employees of the school. The other 4 are students. And so this can be done, without necessarily investing a ton of money. You can if you're in a high school or even a middle school, if you have a middle school, there are really talented students out there that can help you install printers and help you fix a locked frozen machine, or can do some of those tasks, some of those daily things that just really frustrate teachers. Okay? And so students can help with that. And so creating a culture that allows students to help with those sorts of things is a really important piece. It has been an important piece for us, and I think it's an important piece for schools in general. Then I'm going to leave about 10 minutes for questions, maybe. And then the last thing that everybody has to talk about is funding. And I was hoping that I would have some other support here to help me answer some funding questions, because that's not necessarily my strong point. But you to sustain a successful technology program, okay, you have to have a sustainable funding model. Okay? And I'm just going to talk about our funding model a little bit at Faith Lutheran. You can't just rely on one-time gifts or maybe some grant money. While those are great for kickstarting it, if there's not a sustainable budget there, then the program itself isn't going to sustain, because computers don't last forever. Okay? There's always something that needs to be replaced or added to. There's software that needs to be bought, and so those sorts of things all need to be brought to the table. I'll leave our specific numbers if you want. I have some of those written down here for questions if you guys are interested in those sorts of things. But whatever model you choose to fund this, it has to be sustainable. And so what we've done at Faith Lutheran is we have it built directly into our operating costs, into our budget. Did that mean we had to increase tuition? Yes, we did have to increase tuition. And so when we broke down that expenditure per pupil, and we made sure that we had everything calculated out so that we could sustain this over the long haul. Now, we built some of the larger expenses other schools have done differently. I know there are several schools that are doing a bring your own device program, but ultimately you're doing the same thing. If you're either raising tuition by $500 a student, or you're making them go out and buy a $500 iPad, you're still ultimately, as privately funded institutions, that expense gets passed on somewhere. Someone's got to pay for it. And so, but the bring your own device programs I know are very popular, where kids are bringing in their devices, and they've kind of passed some of that initial cost, at least from the device standpoint, onto the students. Whereas we've chosen to fund that internally, and we've retained ownership of the machines. There's pros and cons to both. Again, I can hold off to some of those maybe in the question section, but ultimately it's got to be funded. And that's the one question nobody ever really wants to talk about is how do we fund it? And so we fund it. We just fund it through our tuition. We don't have an extra fee, but if a technology fee makes your school is that's more comfortable for your culture, then that's how you got to do it. But we have built that into our operating budget on a yearly basis. We know how much we're going to spend on laptops. We know how much we're going to spend in software. We know how much we're going to spend in services. We know how much we're going to spend in salaries for support. All those sorts of things are important to discuss. I didn't talk a whole lot about nuts and bolts kinds of things. Because it's so different to every school situation. What we're doing for our Wi-Fi infrastructure is not necessarily going to be the best, because we're a large multi-building campus, isn't going to be the best solution for a smaller elementary school. And so I avoided those types of topics today because they're so varied. I like leaving those sorts of things to the question and answer thing at the end because they're so case specific. And so I hope to tailor the presentation today more on learning and more on education and how you can fully utilize a technology program in your schools. And I would just like to maybe leave this last 10 minutes or so that we have to questions maybe on your specific situations or questions about what we have done on something that maybe you want to hear about. But I would like to entertain maybe some of those questions now. I'm getting in. Let me look at the chat room here real quick. Has the iPad replaced the laptop? I would say at this point, no, has not. It's another device. What we have done here at Faith is our high schoolers are all getting laptops. So we have MacBooks in all of our students' hands. The model has changed over the years. Our newest model, all of our students have the 11-inch MacBook Air. And then we're doing iPads in the middle school. All of our sixth graders this year have iPads. There are just at this point in time. We just haven't, I don't believe that I love the iPad, but for me personally, it's a device that supplements my laptop. But some schools are finding great success with the iPads, and so we just right now that's kind of where we're at. The iPad is an interesting device because in reality it's not even 3 years old yet. It's 2.5 years old. And so, and it's had one of the fastest penetrations into schools, and we don't know where the iPad's going to be at in 4 years. Maybe in 4 years it will be. Maybe in 4 years all we'll have is slate-like devices, and so when you're looking at your plan and when you're looking at calculated risk, that's what some of the things that you want to look at. I think one of the things that we learned though is you can spend forever contemplating a device. Okay, don't let that stand in your way. Okay, any device is going to be better than no device. Pick one and go. In the chat room, we have a question about parents who are change resistant. That's a parent education piece. We do a lot at the beginning of every year when we're handing out new MacBooks. We have a required parent education component, and so we want to make sure that parents understand the whys. Why are we doing this? And that's definitely focused on the instruction again. We think this is going to be beneficial to your child's future. We think this is going to be beneficial for your kids' learning, and so parent instruction is a key component there.
Hey, everyone in the webinar, if you raise your hand, which is done by clicking the small button on the bottom left with the little guy with the icon, once you raise your hand, I'll see that, and I can go ahead and unmute you, and then you can ask your question live.
At Faith, we do have separate technology concepts, but they are all advanced. We are in the, they're all. We offer iPhone development. We offer web page design. We offer graphics classes, but we no longer offer keyboarding. We no longer offer word processing. We no longer offer those types of courses. And so our computer science department works. We have robotics. We have trying to think of others. But yeah, they're all very specialized. They're not just your generic computer classes. Those types of skills can be taught alongside any curriculum that you want in your building. And so those sorts of things are there. We have active slates. So I'm assuming you're talking about the what kind of the interactive whiteboard version, but not the whiteboard itself, but it's the slate that you write on. I think one of the things that I have found just when I've observed schools with interactive whiteboards, especially high schools, is that it becomes very teacher-centric. We want our classrooms to be much more student-centric. And so technologies that enhance lecturing inside the classroom, I put up a red flag there because I always ask, how is this technology going to get into the hands of the students? How is it going to engage this? How is it going to actively, get the student involved in their learning? I have found in elementary and middle school classrooms, I found much more success with the interactive whiteboards. Because the teachers are using them. The kids are the ones coming up to the board. It's not. I don't want the teacher. I don't care if the teacher interacts with the board at all. Actually, I want the students manipulating the board. I want the students touching it. I want the students working with, whether they're doing, doing math manipulatives or doing this cool science interactive. I want to see the student up there doing it. For those elementary schools that are out there, if you do interactive whiteboards, make sure you mount them low enough. It always pains me when I go into an elementary school classroom and I see a first grader or kindergarten teacher that can only reach the bottom sixth of the board. Those things can be mounted lower, get it down so they can use most of the board. And so that's kind of my thought on interactive whiteboards and active slates and those sorts of things. Do the teachers? One of the things that, just to address Denise's question there, do the teachers teach it? One of the things, the most important things that can be taught in a basic technology class is digital literacy. How do we evaluate a good source? How do we know where to search for things? How do we find things on the internet? Those are things that have traditionally been taught alongside keyboarding and those sorts of things. And so it's really important for teachers when they're in their classrooms, and we've seen great strides in this here at Faith Lutheran, is modeling that for students in the classroom. Fortunately, I still have the opportunity to be able to be a classroom teacher as well. I teach a biology class. And so when students, the prime time to do that is when a student has a question in class. Whether I know the answer or not, I'll just pretend I don't know the answer, and I'll walk them through the process of how to find that answer from a good, reliable source. And so modeling that in front of students is an extremely, extremely powerful thing. It's really simple, but an extremely powerful thing. But your teachers have to know how to do that as well, and that comes back to professional development. Do your teachers know how to use Google effectively? Do they know how to go into the advanced searches? Do they know how to limit their searches just to educational institutions? For your middle and elementary school classrooms, and even your high school classroom, you can create custom Google search engines so that to help model this. So on the back end, the teacher can say, I want the kids to be searching, but I only want them to really search while the kids see Google.com or they see a regular search engine. You can limit it to, 4 or 5 different sites so that the students are getting good results from sites that you've already pre-screened. And so, teaching your teachers how to do that kind of stuff and use that kind of stuff is an extremely important thing.
Jonathan, I have a question. I think there are many schools out there that really need someone to come in, diagnose what they need to do in their school, and then develop a plan in consultation with someone from the outside who can give them good advice. Is there anything available for schools on a consultation basis about how they could enact technology in the learning environment and consultants for that?
Yes. Although the new contact person, I'm not sure, because we're in a transition period right now, I would have said, we're putting. I also serve on a technology, the Synod's technology cabinet, and we are in the process, and we have names of people, and we're trying to put a fairly comprehensive list together so it's geographically applicable as well to refer people to from the Synod's level, so that someone can come in, and our goal is to train these people so that they know specifically what to look for. And so right now, what I would have pointed to the now retired Perry Braisman, but I would look forward to on the Lutheran School portal where that information is going to be communicated through, and who those people are, and who you would be able to contact in your districts that would work. Heather's question, do you have laptops in all the classrooms? Yes, our high school is completely one-to-one. Every student has a MacBook. Our middle school right now, all of our sixth graders have iPads, so they're completely one-to-one. And we're in a transition period right now where we have almost a cart for every classroom in our middle school, and then we're going to build that program year to year. Next year we'll have 6th and 7th grade. I'm going to push to do the whole thing, because it would just be weird to have a whole school where just the 8th grade didn't have anything. So I'm going to try to hopefully we can move a little faster. But if not, then next year will be 6th and 7th grade. The year after that, then we'll have every student on our campus will have a device of some sort, middle school iPad, and then the high school laptops.
Jonathan, this is Pam from Hawaii. How are you doing today?
Hi, good.
I had a question about that consultant topic that you previously spoke about. Is there going to be a fee associated with that?
I believe what's going to happen, the model that's going to be used is those, while we will provide the names, it'll be the contracts will be left up to the individual consultants. And so, depending on, if you happen to have a consultant, 2 doors down from you, that's easy to come over in a day, that's going to look much different than if somebody has to fly in or something like that. And so, the Synod's going to orchestrate or try to orchestrate the names, and then, and we'll probably help the consultants, have some sort of standard contract that they can send and issue, but it will be dealt. It won't be done through the financials won't be done through Synod, but be done through the individuals.
Okay,
I'll just add to that a little bit, Jonathan. I believe that in a place like Hawaii that has 6 Lutheran schools located in a very centralized location, one consultant.
I'll consult. No.
Yeah, there you go. One consultant like Jonathan Orr could probably come out there and do a consultation with every school in a matter of a week, and put together a technology plan for perhaps all the 6 schools on Oahu. I think working smartly, the issue is it's going to cost. Bringing a consultant into your school is not free, but instituting a technology plan in your building is not free either. And if you're at a blank place where you just do not know how to proceed, the consultant can get you directed and moving, and then provide ongoing support from the distance, too, as well.
Sure, I understand that. But what I've tried to do here is I've tried to collaborate with the other Lutheran schools. But we've got parents here that have huge hearts and volunteer their services, especially in the technical field, and their schools have gone off and done separate tech models, so to speak. And my biggest concern is software upgrades. It's so much cheaper to buy software bundled at 500 users per se than to buy for like my school 50 to 100. And, collaborating on purchasing software for all the schools here in Hawaii per se would be less expensive. But when we're all on a different program or a technical path, how do we get the schools to want to come together and collaborate? I mean, I know you do it on mainland, but in here in Hawaii we are small and we are close together. And my school is the only school that has a paid staff tech person, so that also provides issues. That's why I'm interested in this base model that maybe I can present to the other principals of the Lutheran schools here. And in the future, when they're getting ready to maybe do some tech upgrades, we can start from there. I know we can't do it now, but like you said, we've got to look the way ahead. And as dollars reduce, we've got to figure out how we can collaborate and work together to make our dollars go further.
Yeah. The other thing I can say that's difficult about that, too, is, especially in the software world, everybody has a different opinion as to what a collective unit is. And so, some organizations won't let you pool your resources, or some software companies won't let you pool your resources, and some will. And so that's a really hard one to address because there's not really a cookie cutter answer there, because you really have to negotiate with individual companies as to what a collective unit is. Is just being all Lutheran schools enough? Are you if you're a part of an association, that would really help, because then you have at least a name to negotiate under. But every educational software company out there has different policies of what a collective unit is, or what a school is, and who they will give discounts or collective licenses to. So that's a hard one to do.
Correct, and I've already researched that, and I have some sources in my hip pocket to springboard off of.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you.
Well, John, this is Trip Rogers, and I know we're coming up on our hour, and I know there will be some people that may be kind of checking out here. And so I would like to thank you for your presentation today and all the efforts that you put into putting this PowerPoint together for us and the information that you shared with us. And a reminder that next week, on October 23rd, we will have the final Faith Lutheran Middle School and High School in Vegas. They will do their Mark 1014 program, which has to do with integrating students with special needs into their Christian school. So for those of you that are departing, we thank you for being with us today, and we'll stay on and see if there are more questions.
Yeah, you don't want to miss that presentation. That's going to be, what they're doing with the Mark 1014 program is absolutely amazing. I'm in awe every day.
Mark 1014 has transformed Faith Lutheran Junior and Senior High School. It's an amazing program, and you don't want to miss that webinar.
Are there any more questions that are out there?
Not seeing any hands raised. So.
Yeah. Well, Jonathan, I see people dropping, but I do want to thank you for all of your effort. This was a great presentation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you guys for inviting me. I enjoy doing these. They're fun.